Hey there folks, and welcome to a Space Engineers multiplayer tutorial. Some of you might be wondering, why are we going to be doing a tutorial on a game that's 7 years old? Well, the reason is because after being an admin on a server for several months now, I found that there are certain issues that lots of people run into that come from a survival background in Space Engineers, but because the multiplayer servers are set up differently than your regular survival worlds, there are things that you have to do or should do differently to be more successful in Space Engineers multiplayer. So we're going to go over a couple of those things to help people get started and get their feet in the ground in a multiplayer server just a little bit quicker. If you want a full tutorial on how to do Space Engineers Survival, there's a million out there, so that's not going to be what this is going to be about. This is specifically going to be tailored for Space Engineers multiplayer on a multiplayer server. So, the first thing you're going to want to do is pick a place that you will start building your base. For our case, we're going to be choosing Mars. I find it to be one of the easiest places to build. So, let's spawn our drop pod on Mars. We're going to click it and hit spawn. And just like in any game, it might take a little bit to spawn in, as servers generally do. Alright, so we are flying down to the surface of Mars. One of the reasons that I like Mars in particular is it's so easy to see where the resources are. You just look for the discoloration in the soil, which is very easy to spot. There's no vegetation covering any of it, so it's very easy to find. So, now that we're here, we're going to have to get started on building our very first base, which is going to be relatively straightforward and simple. What we're going to want to do for certain before we log off is make sure that our survival pod has additional power, and depending on the server, you'll probably actually want to build a base that has power and at least a survival pod before you log off. And, well, I'm gonna get mining, and we're gonna keep talking while we do that. The reason that we're gonna want to do that is in servers they have what's called trash pickup, and trash pickup basically cleans up blocks on servers that have been either unused or are a certain distance away from the player or are unpowered. And this basically keeps the server running smoothly without cluttering up with all these little grids that are no longer used, flying away in space, and so on and so forth. So, what a lot of times admins will do is they will make the trash pickup pick up any block that is unpowered under a certain amount of blocks. Usually it's going to be around 10 to 20 blocks unpowered, and it will get removed. And some admins decide any unpowered blocks at all will get removed. So we're going to want to make sure that we have a base that is going to have constant power. So wind power is probably going to be the option that we're going to want to choose for our first base. And we're also going to want a respawn area in that base before we log off, because sure, we may have a grid that we made, but if we don't have a way to respawn at it, well, we're not going to be able to get to it, because we could respawn literally thousands of kilometers away. So, the first thing you're going to want to do is, obviously, like we're doing now, is do some mining, gather some rock so we can turn it into material and build that base. So, I think I'm going to get back to you when we are a little bit closer to that goal. So, right now we are turning our stone into ingots, which we're going to have to do quite a bit of. One thing that you're going to also want to do is you're going to want to fly around and find the nearest water resource. This is just a basic survival thing. It's not necessarily specific to what we're doing here, but we're going to want to find the nearest water resource. Alright, well, we managed to find ice, and not only is there ice here, but there's actual surface ice, not too far away, but this is a little bit closer. So we're going to want to find the ice, which is exactly what we did, and one thing that we're going to want to do as well is we're going to want to head back to our base, and we're actually going to turn off our antenna, because right now our antenna is broadcasting to everyone in the server where we are. And some people in the server, well, they might not be so friendly to you, so one of the things that you're going to want to do is go fly over to where you have your respawn pod and where you're building your base, wherever I placed my ship... Ah, there it is, hiding in the distance. I knew it was there somewhere. So what we're going to do is we're going to go in here, take our antenna, and we're just going to straight up turn the antenna off. We're also going to make sure that the beacon is turned off as well. And to make sure that we don't lose the position of our base while we are exploring, obviously we're going to create from our current position. This is where our base is going to be. We're just going to create a GPS location of where our base is. Alright, I think that's all done. Let's feed some more of that in there. We do have some ice, so let's make sure that we fill up on our hydrogen so we can go exploring and finding some resources, specifically iron. But I think we're going to leave out the standard and monotonous survival that everybody's familiar with in their single player, and we're just going to intervene when we have tips and tricks, kind of like we did with the antenna. Alright, so we are going to continue refining resources and ingots so that we can build our base. So let's say you're out and about mining like I was, and you see all of these GPS locations here, and they start to get a little bit clustered. One thing that you can do if you want to know where your base is right away is you can go to your GPS locations and take your base and just change the color. I found that this helps quite a lot. That way you don't necessarily have to see the tag to know exactly which GPS location is your base. So that's one thing that you can do that can help you to prevent yourself from getting lost while you're out and about mining and exploring. I found it very helpful, and it is indeed pretty useful. So we have been mining a decent amount off screen, and we've gathered a decent amount of materials. We're gonna throw in a little bit more stone and get that refined. We also have some ice, so we'll throw that in there. And the very first thing that we're going to do is we are going to take what we've made, all of this. I believe this should be enough to make our very first block. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some power to our survival pod. In the case that this particular server will not despawn your survival pod, you can just add power to it, and then you'll be able to respawn at it at any time. Whereas if you just let this sit here, it has no way of gathering power. It has a battery, but it will eventually run out, so we're going to need some power, and we'll get that running. Alright, so now that we have that, it should at least be able to keep the battery filled, so that when we log off and log back on, we'll have a place to log back in. And on the off chance that you're on a server that despawns the respawn pod every time you log in, well, you'll probably have to build a base. And we are going to do that this episode as well. And one thing that you can do to increase your survival chances in multiplayer is, well, build a base underground, because the less footprint you have up top, the better chance of survival you have from getting discovered from other players. So we're going to get to work on building our base. So cue the montage. Alright, well, our basic base has been completed. We have everything that we need so that if we were to respawn, we can get up and going again. We have a basic refinery, which is much better than our survival kit, which is all that we had. We also have a basic assembler, a battery, and a survival kit so that we can refill our energy. And in addition to that, you can see that we have 2 windmills. This particular server will not despawn our survival pod, but in case it does despawn your survival pod, we have everything that we need. And to test that, what we're going to do is, let's actually drop everything that we can into the assembler here. And once we've dropped this into the assembler, we are going to attempt to respawn and see if it works out for us. It looks like we may have to use the survival kit. Can we fit that in here? No, we can't. I really don't want to lose our oxygen tank, so let's put that up in here. I don't think it will fit, but it's okay if we lose a little bit of ice. We have plenty of that. There we go. Alright, let's try to respawn, and for those of you who are unfamiliar, just backspace to respawn. And we should respawn at our survival pod. Yep, there we go. Also, for those of you who are wondering, if you want the respawn menu to pop up in survival multiplayer, you have to respawn while your body still has not despawned yet. So our body has despawned, so we're going to have to respawn yet one more time, and then the screen should pop up to allow us to pick our respawn point. So we can pick anything that we want to respawn in. However, because we have a survival pod, we'll just respawn in our survival pod. So that is how you can choose your respawn location. It's a little bit of a wonky way to do it, but in the current iteration of Space Engineers, that's the only way that I'm aware of. So that is going to be it for our first little tutorial episode. Thank you folks for watching. If you'd like to see more of this, specifically multiplayer tutorial series, feel free to let me know in the comment section below. If not, that'll be it for this series, and I'll catch you guys next time.